Okay, I'm back. So, here's some of what's been just like rolling around in my head lately. But once you can grasp the idea of we're all on separate timelines, I mean, really, because there are infinite number of timelines. So, even within your family, you're on different timelines. You all have your own timeline. Once you can grasp that idea, then the next like layer or level that I think 2020 is asking us to consider is, can you allow for non-judgment of all of the other timelines? Can you be okay with everybody being on whatever timeline they want to be on? Because I think step one was just admitting that there are other timelines. But really, once you see it, then I think we very quickly, as humans, just go to, well, my timeline is better than your timeline. I'm on the higher timeline. I'm on the better timeline. Why doesn't everybody just come and get on my timeline? Because it's the better timeline. We can't do that. There are reasons and purposes for every timeline, and each person embodied here on Earth right now has their own energy makeup, their own soul contracts, their own lessons, their own reason for being. And so they need the timeline that they're on for whatever reason. It's serving a purpose for them. But that makes us take a really deep breath and a really big step back to be like, okay, So because of that, you've got to have like a system basically on kind of running things through your own internal filters to know what's true for you, what feels good or doesn't feel good in alignment or out of alignment for you. Because if you're looking for those answers elsewhere, you've got millions of people on millions of different timelines all shouting at you that you should believe what they believe. And you can't find an answer right now. I don't know if you've tried. And if you feel like you have an answer, that is your inner knowing. If you're like, I know masks are 100% slowing the spread of the virus, that's your timeline. And if you're like, I know 100% that they do nothing, that's the timeline you're on. But you have to know that internally, or you have to be able to kind of filter. Where I think we start getting ourselves into trouble is when we start judging other people or belittling their decisions or trying really hard to convince them that they are wrong and we are right. Because as solid as you are in your knowing, they are in their knowing. And I was joking the other day, I was like, if I didn't have social media, would I know what I was supposed to be doing right now? Like, would I be receiving this information from anywhere else? Not really. I mean, depending on your situation, you may be receiving information from places other than social media, but I'm not. Like, if I turned it all off tomorrow, I would literally have no idea what the entire rest of the world thought I should be doing or not doing, or what their opinion of me and my choices are. So ultimately, what we have to remember is that if we are here, embodied, on Earth, at this moment in time, it's because we are highly advanced beings who chose to be here during this time. Every single person, even the politicians, everybody is a highly advanced being, and everybody came to Earth this time around with specific goals, specific timelines, and are integral and important to the entire process. So it's not up to us to judge what somebody else is doing and what their choices are and how their life is playing out. The next piece of that really, though, is to also remember that we're all a part of Source experiencing itself. We really are all one. And what that means in not so much a love and light way, but in a logical way is, because we are all a piece of Source and because we are all one, we are choosing to have all of these different experiences at the same time. So, whether you like it or not, you're Donald Trump. I'm Donald Trump. We're all Donald Trump. He is all of us. just how it works. So let that timeline play out however it's going to play out, and do your best to stick to your inner knowing and your beliefs and your truth, and don't be afraid to change your mind. That's how you change timelines. You make a different decision, change your mind. So you can do that too if you want, or not. Whatever your inner knowing tells you to do. Okay, that's a lot to digest on a Sunday afternoon while you're sipping a White Claw. So, hit me up with your questions. I will continue to pontificate. Okay, so there's a couple pieces to this. The first piece is that we are learning as we go from 3D reality to 5D reality that we are infinite creators in this universe, and we create the experiences we have. So collectively, you could say we manifested Donald Trump. What we really did was say, it's time for us to uncover some of this darkness that is still very prevalent in our society, and we want to heal it. But we can't heal it just like our own personal healing. It has to come to the surface. It has to come to the light. So we created an experience so that we could play that out and see that and learn that lesson and do that healing work. So partially, yes. The other piece that's much more timeline related is that there's timelines where he didn't win. There's timelines playing out where Hillary's the president right now. You could be on that timeline. It's really hard, though, for us to truly grasp that and truly believe, like, this is what we're learning. We're just not quite there where we can just be like, oh, okay, fine, I'm just going to go be on that timeline now. So some of the easier places to start with that and incorporating that is really saying to yourself, what about the current timeline am I on or am I not on? Does Donald Trump really interact with me and my daily life all that much? I mean, maybe he does, but maybe he doesn't. How much energy and focus do you need to put on being on that timeline and being involved in that timeline? You can choose how much. Look, I don't want to go to a dinner party with Donald Trump or like be his best friend. We're picking on him here because he is an easy and polarizing example. Ultimately, when you look at it from a soul level, like imagine the choice his soul made to come here and impact the world on the level that it is, and the amount of things that are able to play out and be resolved as a result of that choice that his soul made. And so from that perspective, I can just look at it as it's all playing out with some kind of purpose. I don't know what it is, but it's important. I know that. But what I'm doing is important too. And so I don't have to focus on that timeline, especially if it annoys me. I can just let it be. Not stuck so much. We're moving timelines constantly. Not only are there infinite timelines, like you personally have infinite timelines. Every time you make a choice, you switch to another timeline. So, yes. But there's also dimensions. 3D, 4D, 5D. Those are more like the universal laws, physics of the world that you are living in or living by. And they're different when you switch dimensions. We are also switching dimensions quite a bit right now. We're not solidly all the way to 5D. Some people are very much still in 3D. It's very fluid right now. And it's the dimensions that are layered on top of each other and the timelines. So even if you think about like a 9D being, like a star being coming in and communicating with you, like their dimension is layered here too. That's how they can just like pop in and talk to us. Like they still exist in this place. We're just not aware of it in the same way. And so we are moving back and forth all the time. I talk about this in one or both of those blog posts this morning that I mentioned as well. But you will find that in your experience, you'll find places that are very much more anchored into a 3D reality or very much more anchored into a 5D reality. And, for instance, oftentimes, things that we might consider more like our institutions, like hospitals, schools, the police station, like, they are probably going to feel more anchored into the laws and beliefs of 3D. Obviously, there are exceptions to everything, but even some grocery stores, I've noticed this. So, when I find those kinds of places, I just, to the best of my ability, try to stay away because they trip you up. And by that, I mean you find yourself falling into those beliefs. It's just really easy to slide back into it. So you just all of a sudden find yourself back into being like, these are the rules, must follow the rules, must do as I'm told. Cannot create any other realities. This is the only option. So, it's all up to, again, what you feel, what feels good to you, what doesn't feel good to you. But 5D really is where we get to basically create and delete at will. You have something that seems interesting to you, you create it, you make it so. You don't like it anymore, you delete it. Start over. Create, destroy, create, delete, however you want to think about it. So, we're getting to play with that right now. And so I ask myself those kinds of questions regularly. What do I want to create? What reality do I want to have for myself today? This is where Hollywood has messed us up. We all think it's this big thing, right? Like you step in a machine and you pop out in another timeline, or you drive a car really fast to another time. Whatever. It's very, very subtle. This thing right here, your body, is the time machine. Does everything you need. The biggest lie we've been told is that we don't have control over our experience, and we are constantly choosing and switching timelines. And so sometimes one choice can dramatically change your timeline, and that's really easy to see. You're like, well, I chose to move 3 states away. You picked another timeline. That's a big choice that has a big effect on your timeline. Because obviously if you had stayed where you were, a whole different series of events would have played out than if you moved. 2 different timelines. What usually happens is that we're making little tiny adjustments and choices day after day after day. And then a year or 5 years later, you can look back and be like, whoa, I'm in a totally different place than I thought I would be. I do practice Reiki, but outside of that, it's all nature, the earth. I also have blog posts that go into great depth of how that works. I don't have like a set every day I do this practice, but pretty regularly, most days, I do some version of meditating, channeling, where I actually sit with a notebook and pen and like ask questions and let the answers come through. I spend time outside. I get my body or my feet directly on the ground so that my electromagnetic current can realign with the Earth's, which is very healing, and really just calling my energy back to myself and being back in my own energy field, like the messages come through. In general, yes, as soon as you set an intention that you want to communicate, it's like flipping a light switch on and they can see you. So, and then come in and work on communicating with you. So, yes. And putting yourself in a protective bubble of light is really helpful, especially when you're initially doing this, to protect your own energy and be able to discern other energies that may want to communicate with you, and deciding whether or not you want to invite them into your safe space or keep them outside. So I explain all of these details in the free monthly live training that I do, which is how to communicate with the spirits of nature. It's on the 19th of August, so a week from Wednesday, I think. So sign up for it in the link to my profile and you'll get like all the details on how to do that. And if you're really into all the timeline stuff and you're feeling called to learn more about and work with timelines more, I have a whole module inside the Earth Tenders Academy where we talk all about this super in depth and then specifically work on how to remove or merge old timelines of our own. So that's the big picture of what's actually happening. We're letting go of old timelines so that we can ascend and move to these new dimensions. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, that is also in my profile.